And good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Hey, I do appreciate you being with me so ever much. And I hope you'll be still telling your friends, your neighbors. You know, we did hit kind of a landmark for me, 6,000 subscribers recently. We're now climbing on up. And boy, I appreciate that so very, very. Oh, my goodness gracious. Good coffee. So anyway, continue to share the news, will you? It's so important that we get this message out. I have to tell you, I am getting an increasing number of absolutely fantastic testimonials, mostly private messages, of people that are just sharing how covenant eschatology is so liberating. It's restoring their faith in the Lord and in His Word. And it's freeing them from fear of the future. And I really know what coming to an understanding of fulfilled eschatology did for me in my own personal life. It was transformative. And it continues to be transformative. Okay? So, like I said, continue to share the news, share the word, get more and more people to watching. You know, how awesome would it be if I could reach 10,000 subscribers? Wow, that would be unbelievable. You know, the largest congregation that I ever preached for full-time, in full-time ministry, was a congregation of a little over 400. We approached 420, 430 at a time or two. But nonetheless, the very idea of having, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 subscribers, that's a pretty serious congregation, isn't it? So anyway, thank you again for joining me. Okay, as promised yesterday, let me remind you, we're looking at Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, the gathering to gather the kingdom at the time of the gathering that in which Jesus used that very, very important Greek word. He used a future conjugation of it, of synagoge, episynagoge. And again, he used it in the future tense, of the gathering of the nations for the judgment. This is and let's not forget this, do not lose sight of this. I don't know of anybody that denies this. Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is the end of the age. Everyone agrees, okay? And everyone agrees that's Revelation chapter 11. Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, it's the coming of the Lord. Everybody agrees that's Revelation 11. And again, it's the time of the gathering, okay? It's the time of the harvest of Matthew chapter 13 that I shared with you earlier in the week. And it's the time of the resurrection. Look, I don't know anybody that disagrees with that. So you have Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, which is the resurrection. You have Revelation chapter 11, 15 and following, which is undeniably the resurrection. This is where it gets really, really, really interesting, folks. Because as I hinted at earlier in the week, many postmillennialists, Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, Keith Matheson, Joel McDermott, guess what? They say Revelation 11 was fulfilled in AD 70. Oh, but then they jump ship and they say, well, yeah, AD 70 was typological. Well, I answer that, remember, in my book, AD 70, A Shadow of the Real End, ? In my February 2022 U.S. orders only special. If you order these separately, paid separate shipping, it would cost you over $60 for the month of February 2022. You're going to save, it costs you over $70, excuse me. I'll get the math right. You're going to save over $20 in our February special. Take advantage of it. You'll be glad that you did. Okay, now then. So we have all of this agreement that is out there in the amillennial, postmillennial world about the application of Revelation chapter 11. But then, of course, they dichotomize and say, oh, no, Matthew 25, 31, that's the end of the world. Well, wait a minute. If they are both about the gathering and the judgment of the nations, and they are, And if they're both about the time of the resurrection, and they are, and if it's the time of Christ sitting on the throne of his glory and ruling forever and ever, and it is, then where in the world, where's the authority, where's the justification, where's the textual justification for saying Revelation 11 AD 70, Matthew chapter 25, 31 into the world? Where is that justification? It's not there. So, back to Revelation chapter 10 to set the stage for Revelation chapter 11. Remember that John saw two angels, and one of them lifts his hands and he swore by him who lives forever and ever. And it says, in the days of the sounding of the seventh angel, when he was about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished, as he declared to his servants the prophet. Now, as I pointed out yesterday, this is virtually unanimously agreed, almost unanimously agreed. This is a direct echo and allusion of Daniel chapter 12, verse 6. Okay, so in Daniel chapter 12, we have the prophecy of the Great Tribulation, the resurrection, the time of the end, the time of the kingdom, and the righteous shining forth in the kingdom. And it would be when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. Now, I want, very, very quickly, I just want to make this point in passing, okay? Nobody that I'm aware of denies that the time of the resurrection is the time of the fulfillment of all prophecy. I don't care if you're dispensational, amillennial, postmillennial. I just don't know of anybody that denies that. Oh yeah, resurrection is the end of the age, it's the end of the new covenant, it's the end of all prophecy, on and on and on. It's admitted, ladies and gentlemen. So, just, get that point very well seated. Daniel chapter 12, time of the resurrection, thus, Daniel chapter 12, the time of the fulfillment of all prophecy. Okay, Revelation chapter 10. In the sounding of the seventh trumpet, echoing Daniel chapter 12, when he is about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished. Now, there are two ways to understand this text. What is the mystery of God? Well, if we take the normal definition of the mystery of God as Jew and Gentile equality in Christ, as Ephesians 3, 3-8 defines it, as it is defined in Colossians chapter 1, 26 and 27. If we take that definition of Jew and Gentile equality, then in the sounding of the seventh trumpet, God's scheme of redemption to incorporate on an equal footing with each other Jew and Gentile in Christ, to create the one new man, to create the new creation, that from that point forward, all men of every nation, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they're from, can now be members of that new creation. So that's one way to understand the mystery of God. The other way to define the mystery of God is in a more comprehensive manner of saying the mystery of God, as foretold by the prophets, is everything that the prophets foretold. I have to tell you, I'm kind of torn between the two. I used to take Revelation 10 and verse 6 and 7 as strictly about the mystery of God, Jew and Gentile equality. And it really doesn't matter in one way if we define it that way, on a little bit narrower of a way, versus the more comprehensive view that in the sounding of the seventh trumpet all prophecy would be fulfilled, because we can conflate those two situations. We can conflate those times, okay? Because Paul believed that his ministry of proclaiming the gospel, of presenting every man as perfect in Christ, Colossians chapter 1, verse 26, to complete the mystery of God, again, Colossians 1, 26 and 27, Paul believed that would happen in and through his personal ministry. Not some ministry of some future generations, but fulfilled in his personal ministry. So again, I'm not trying to create any vast dichotomization between the mystery of God, i.e. Jew and Gentile, being fulfilled in the days of the sounding of the seventh trumpet, and or versus the idea of all prophecy being fulfilled. Because you see, Daniel chapter 9, 24 says 70 weeks are determined to seal up vision and prophecy. To seal up vision and prophecy, as I fully document in my book, which I thought I had laying here. I guess I must have shipped that off. So in that book, Seal Up Vision and Prophecy, which, by the way, I revised and enlarged in 2019, that term, Seal Up Vision and Prophecy, or more accurately, Seal Vision and Prophecy, meant, and I document this from a wide variety of scholarly sources, linguistic experts, meant to complete the revelatory process and put a seal of authentication on all prophecy through the fulfillment of all prophecy. In other words, Daniel 9 was predicting the time when all prophecy would be fulfilled, thus vindicating and authenticating all prophecy. So once again, there is no dichotomy, there is no really sharp distinction between the mystery of God being Jew and Gentile equality versus the time of the fulfillment of all prophecy. But keep this in mind. Everyone agrees the fulfillment of all prophecy would occur at the time of the resurrection. When would this occur? In the days of the sounding of the seventh trumpet. Now, let me reiterate this point, and I'm out of time. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 52, Paul says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the sounding of the last trumpet. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a festal reference. It is a reference to the Feast of Sukkot, in which on the last day, the great day of the feast, the pilgrims marched around the altar with their lulav and their ephod, shaking them toward the altar, going, "Save, Lord, save us now," or something very similar to that. And the trumpet sounded 7 times, heralding back to the deliverance of Jericho and the conquering of that city. The 7th trumpet was the herald of the completion of Sukkot. I hope you can see the train that is coming, okay? Because Sukkot heralded the resurrection. Well, I'm out of time. I realize I'm sort of kind of leaving things hanging here, but that's on purpose. Next Monday, we'll pick it up with Revelation 10 and Revelation chapter 11. In the meantime, I hope you've done your homework, because tomorrow we're going to pick up on video number 7 in our study and examination of why N.T. Wright is wrong on the redemption of creation. I gave you a homework, and that is to read Isaiah 26. Now, Isaiah 26 is important. The whole chapter is about resurrection, thus the redemption of creation. There are a few verses that are specifically and pointedly about that, but the whole context cannot be ignored. Do that, and I'll see you on the flip side.